Hey, 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 happy holidays. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, incredibly enough, not only thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief, but also this week, Polar Vortex 9. And I'll talk a little bit more about our sponsor in just a few moments. But welcome aboard, everybody. Tonight is Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. This is live stream 1133. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out, super casual around here. Just hang out talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news, and then I'll normally pontificate about a topic related to our hobby, which I'm going to be continuing our December series where I am looking at various different classic advanced Dungeons and Dragons adventures. Tonight, we are going to talk about the G series, G1, 2, and 3, sometimes referred to as Against the Giants, but that's when they were collected years later. So I just referred to this as the Giants Trilogy because we're going to be talking about the original modules, which came out all the way back in 1978. I would have been 10 years old at that time. Yes. So when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to stop on by the newly redesigned thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you're not going to find on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Don't forget, appease the YouTube algorithm lord. And if you get a chance, please comment on the videos. Goes a long way. Goes a long way to making the lords of YouTube actually share this channel, these videos, with absolute strangers. Absolute strangers. And of course, because this is a live show, that also means there is chat available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. And you have to be a subscriber for at least 10 whole minutes before you can take part in chat. Another way I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you check both those boxes and you want to say howdy, or maybe you've got a question, a comment, by all means, chime in. I'll do my very best to respond. First out the gate tonight is Sean O'Donnell. We've also got Semper Buffo, Keith Ulu, Mike, Kevin R. Smith, Kathy Evans, and I think possibly the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D is possibly lurking in the shadows. She is one of our chat moderators. She is the one yielding the glittery banhammer because, you know, you get banned with that thing. As Sarah points out, you'll never get the glitter out. All right. So, as I mentioned, we got a brand new sponsor. That's right. This week, the Dispatch is being sponsored by Polar Vortex 9. Take a break from the cold this February by gathering with friends and family to enjoy the warmth and fun of playing games together at Polar Vortex 9, Chicagoland's favorite local winter gaming convention. The Polar Vortex team invites you to join them at the Sheridan Lyle Naperville Hotel, February 14th. Yes, that is correct. Valentine's Day. Through the 16th, 2025. Polar Vortex grew out of a desire to create a general tabletop gaming convention in the Chicago region that gaming hobbyists and the general public could enjoy. They also want to support local game retailers and publishers and give back to the general community. At this year's convention, you'll find not only myself and Elliot, as well as probably my brother Greg and my nephew Cameron, but also activities such as Play and Win, the Dungeons and Dragons Adventurers League, the Star Wars role-playing game, Pathfinder and Starfinder Societies, Shadowrun, Pirate Borg, Dungeon Crawl Classics, Mothership, Twilight Imperium, the Catan National Qualifier. I'm kind of surprised that's still going on. I didn't think Catan would be all that popular anymore. There's a Crokinole tournament. I think that's how it's pronounced. I've heard people pronounce it various different ways. I've never played Crokinole. Crokinole? Crokinole? You know, it's like a dexterity game. Yeah. Yeah, take a peek at that. I was good at darts. I was very good at darts back in the day. There's a bolt action tournament, a Star Wars Legion tournament, Gaslands tournament. Yes, the vehicular combat, not the, once you eat chili sort of thing. Game demos, a board game library. There's a silent auction for charity benefiting the American Cancer Society. Children's events and activities at the Family Craft Corner. There are some raffles going on, which are going to benefit the Extra Life Children's Hospital of Chicago. It's the Lurie's Children's Hospital of Chicago, which we have actually done a couple of, I'm trying to remember the title of it. It's like the 24 hours of gaming, but we only did 12. But for Extra Life, yes. So we've got that going on. Costume contest, paint and take, painting seminars. Oh, maybe my nephew Cameron could get into one of those. Miniature painting competition, vendors, crafters, and artistes, and more. Celebrate Valentine's Day Friday night with a special semi-private event where couples can enjoy a variety of two-player games while indulging in a Sunday bar. Well. Fancy. Hey, wait a second. What do you mean semi-private? So what about single folks? No Sunday bar for them, huh? The Polar Vortex team is excited to offer another fun convention experience this year, packed with a range of activities. You can grab a weekend badge for all 3 days, Friday through Sunday, and it'll put you back $45. There is a special group rate at the Sheridan as well. It is $119 a night. I know that for a fact because I booked a room. Yes, I told you, Ellie and I are going to be there. So we thought, well, what the hell? We'll just book a room there. I mean, funny enough, it's like an hour drive from my house, but rather than driving back and forth, figured why not stay there? So if you'd like to learn more, by all means, visit polarvortex.games. You can register for the convention over at tabletop.events. Very cool. Very cool. So yes, they are our sponsor for this week. Very nice. Sami is with us. I believe this might be a first-time visit in chat. That name doesn't ring a bell for me. So welcome aboard. Sarah D has emerged from the shadows and says, yes, she is actually working with Dollar Tree fake snow for her glitter tonight. It is the worst kind. So behave. Sean O'Donnell says this is actually walking distance, basically walking distance from them. Hey, maybe some of you pop in, hang out. I know we've got some viewers in the area. Take a peek. So I happen to talk to the gentlemen who run Polar Vortex because they actually picked up some games from me from the 50/50 charity sale that I just wrapped up. And they're going to be in their play and win. So the play and win it's like a game library. My understanding is it's covered under your badge. So you check a game out, you play it. If it's a game that is available to be won, when you check the game back in, you say, yeah, I wouldn't mind winning that. And then on Sunday, they essentially raffle off all those games that are up for play and win. And I was informed that no one can win a second game until everybody who's there hoping to get a game gets a game. So I thought that was kind of cool too. All righty then. So that is 14th, 15th, and 16th of February 2025 at the Sheridan Lyle Naperville. So maybe you decide to pop in, hang out, and play some games with Elliot and I. I know we should be paying people $45 to do that. Anywho, all right, let's jump on into the news because Modiphius Entertainment is currently taking pre-orders for Paranoia, the uncooperative board game. Here's the scoop. Security clearance infrared cleared for all citizens. Attention, citizen. Welcome to Alpha Complex, the perfect and in no way dystopian city run by the benevolent and infallible computer. The computer is your friend. Trust the computer. Welcome, troubleshooters. You're among the computer's most elite, expendable agents tasked with carrying out its completely insane demands. Prove your loyalty. Complete missions for the computer by sneaking, snitching, and scheming to earn the highest clearance level. Rest assured, your clone will absolutely not die in spectacularly horrible ways. In the unlikely event of their premature demise, your next clone will do better. Probably. Shoot trouble in the face and all other life-critical body parts with an array of perfectly unstable and not prone to exploding equipment. Report the treasonous activities of your friends before they report yours. Complete tasks and step over the smoking boots of traitors or loved ones on your way to the top clearance level. Ultraviolet. Fun is mandatory. Failure is to have fun is treason. Treason is punishable by summary execution. Message ends. It's a highly replayable game of science fiction slapstick one-upsmanship for 2 to 6 players. Paranoia, the uncooperative board game, will leave you and your friends in stitches, both figuratively and literally. Medical grade stitches sold separately. Paranoia, the uncooperative board game, is for 2 to 6 players, ages 14 and up. Plays in around 120 minutes. For others out there, we like to call that 2 hours. And carries an MSRP of $49.99. Got to point out, I have heard conflicting numbers with that. So we already know, if you go over to like Modiphius.us, they charge you a little bit more than the MSRP. And it's always oddball prices based on exchange rate. Whereas if you went to an online retailer here in the United States, they will tell you, oh, it's this, right? It's X amount, $49.99 in this case. But I also heard $50. And then if you go to Modiphius.us, it's, I think, $52.88 or something weird like that. Regardless, you can pre-order from Modiphius Entertainment right now. And this is expected to ship in January. So not a long wait at all. So there you've got that. So Shadow Dell says, so the computer is now a Jeff voice trigger face or phrase. The computer. Yeah, no, every once in a while I'll throw an oddball voice out there, especially when we do like Western role playing or Western games, period. But they're normally role playing game news pieces. Cthulhu says it's like a world created by Orwell, Kafka, Huxley, and the Marx Brothers. Chris Lundgren is popping on in. Russell Higgins is also joining us in chat tonight. Moving right along. The Warhammer 40,000 role-playing Imperium Maledictum Inquisition GM's Guide, say that 5 times fast, has landed in PDF. You can also pre-order this too. I've got the lowdown from Cubicle 7 Games. And no, I won't do a different voice. The Macarian sector burns. The heresies Macaria are in motion. Inquisitor Lord Hieronymo Drake. Hieronymo! Oh, wait. It's Geronimo. Inquisitor Lord Hieronymo Drake is dead. Much like the sector itself, the Macarian Inquisition is in disarray. But one Inquisitor has risen to the challenge of uniting them in conclave. Actually, by the way, pretty good movie. I just saw it the other night. Beyond the countless heretics, demonic influences, and foul xenos, lurks a threat that, left unchecked, could consume the whole sector. Can the conclave's inquisitors and acolytes put their shadow wars aside and work together to purge this threat before it threatens the entire Imperium? The Inquisition guides bring the holy orders of the Emperor's Inquisition to life at your gaming table. The second half of a thrilling 2-book set for Warhammer 40,000 Roleplay Imperium Maledictum. The Inquisition GM's Guide gives you all the tools and content you need to craft unforgettable and perilous investigations for your players and their acolytes. A deep dive into inquisitional philosophies. How can they influence an inquisitor's decisions, shape their goals, and hook characters into further missions? A collection of GM advice for running Inquisition investigations, tips on role-playing characters, how to seed in clues, chaos, corruption, and demonic influence. There are 6 sample Inquisitor patrons with rich histories and motivations. Any of them could be the perfect ally or secret enemy for your party. The Heresies Macaria campaign, a decade-spanning adventure where players will travel all across the sector and face every kind of threat, all while rooting out deadly mysteries and corruption within the Inquisition itself. A roster of inquisitorial contacts for players to interact with, and a collection of deadly sector threats to seed into your campaigns as driving antagonists or obstacles. The Inquisition GM's Guide requires the Imperium Maledictum core rulebook to play. It brings the focus in on Inquisition-themed adventures, making new elements available to your ongoing campaign or setting you up for a brand new adventure. The Inquisition Player's Guide completes the 2-book set, containing all the tools and new rules you need to build and outfit acolytes and their Inquisitor patrons. Right now, you can pre-order the 176-page hardcover with PDF for $44.99. If you want to grab the PDF alone right now, you certainly can. It is available as of today over at Drive-Thru RPG for $22.99. The physical book itself, if you do the pre-order, is going to ship out second or third quarter of 2025. But of course, you will get the PDF immediately or nearly immediately. Always cool to see some new Imperium Maledictum stuff arriving. So very nice there. I will assume we will have an opportunity to take a peek at this. When it comes out next year. So very nice. Very nice. So Pete Straklich asks, anyone see the Heretic film? I'm trying to remember. I don't think so. Cthulhu says, I assume this is related to Warhammer 40K because there are a number of films with Heretic in their titles. Talk about the Heretic film. I don't think so. Yeah, the one with Hugh Grant, where Hugh Grant's the bad guy. So like, it's supposed to be a horror movie or something. Here it's pretty good. Here it's pretty good. Kevin R. Smith says, so obviously it's got nothing to do with Warhammer, as Hugh Grant is the least grimdark person ever. So on a Warhammer 40K related front, the series finally got greenlit by Amazon that Henry Cavill has been involved with. So I think they only had a few days left to actually, give it the thumbs up, or they were going to lose the opportunity to work on it. So that's kind of cool. I'm sure Henry's super excited. so there is that. Moving right along, Mongoose Publishing and Bundle of Holding have teamed up for a couple of money-saving deals for the Traveler role-playing game. And here's the deets on the core deal. Traveler! This new Mongoose Traveler 2024 update presents recent rules expansions and ship source books for the second edition Traveler tabletop science fiction role-playing game line. Wow, that was a mouthful. From Mongoose Publishing. Mongoose Traveler lets you play any science fiction role-playing game campaign. Desperate battles across the stars. Free traders operating on both sides of the law. Grungy cyberpunk cities. Or campaigns spanning entire galaxies where mighty empires clash and suns explode. Traveler lets you explore the universe the way it suits you. And these supplements, all published in the last 2 years, give you new allies, contacts, and enemies, starships, large and small, and robots of every size from nano to colossal. For just $17.95, you'll get all 5 titles in this offer's Traveler 2024 updates, which has a retail value of $150 as DRM-free PDFs, including the complete Traveler Core Rulebook Update 2022, which has been presented before in several other offers, along with the Update 2024 version of the Traveler Companion, and 3 supplements new to Bundle of Holding: Adventure Class Ships, the Small Craft Catalog, and the Robot Handbook. These savings run through January 13th. 10% of your payment after gateway fees will be donated to the Diana Jones Award Emerging Designer Program. Ta-da. I always point out, and I mention this from time to time, I have gamers say to me all the time, Jeff, I would really like to check out Traveler. I always hear good things about the Mongoose version of Traveler, the second edition of Mongoose Traveler, which I guess from here on out will now simply just be Traveler, right? And they always say, hey, you know what? But the books are so goddamn expensive. Even the PDFs are like, they're so expensive. It's outside my budget. I don't want to jump on board a game that, the core book is basically sucking up my entire budget for a game. And I get it. And I always tell them, as I tell you folks watch it out there, keep your eyes peeled for the bundles that pop up from time to time, because this is going to be how you get into Traveler. This is it. Russell Higgins points out, got it. It's the only cheap way to get to Traveler. Yeah, you know what? I'm trying to remember if we have seen Traveler pop up on Humble Bundle. For some reason, I want to say it's happened. It has happened in the past. I don't think it happens too often, but it has happened in the past. I want to say. I can't tell you positively, but I could swear that there have been like really big Mongoose Traveler second edition offers on Humble Bundle like once a year. Anyway, regardless, you can jump on board $17.95. It's less than just the PDF for the updated core rulebook. Bang. So Russell Higgins says, I bought 2 bundles for less than the cost of the main rulebook. Right. Because there is another Traveler bundle that I will be talking about tomorrow. But this is the core. This is the one where if you do not have the core rulebook, this is where you jump on board because you get the core rulebook and you get the companion. Those are your 2 important releases. The ship book's fine. The robot book, fine. I mean, I'm sure they're cool, but there's enough content in the core book and the companion book that it's not like, oh my gosh, I gotta have these ship books. So keep that in mind. All righty, moving right along. The Realms of Pugmire core rulebook is now available in print and PDF. And here's a skinny from Onyx Path Publishing. Dogs have inherited the world, building the kingdom of Pugmire, untold centuries after the age of man is over. These dogs have been uplifted to use tools and language, and they seek to rediscover the ruins of the old ones. Some have learned to use the leftover technology of humanity, but they believe it to be magic handed to them by their lost gods. Others seek to create an ideal civilization using a code of man compiled from ancient, fragmentary lore left behind by humanity. The world is dangerous and mysterious, but good dogs will persevere. Some highlights of Realms of Pugmire include an evocative and mysterious setting that's both family-friendly and deep enough to create compelling stories. The Onyx 20 rule system, designed for streamlined play and easy creation of heroic dogs with an emphasis on cooperation and action over competition and violence. A variety of callings and breeds that give access to several fun and interesting tricks. Rival species to interact with, like cats and rodents, along with terrifying and dangerous monsters that roam the landscape, such as those giant ants that you're taking a look at right now. New features of this edition include refined and clarified rules, developed after years of playing and community feedback. New and updated tricks, spells, masterworks, and enemies. New features such as random and template character creation, friendship rules, and safety tool advice for guides. Advice on how to create cat and rodent player characters right away. This 224-page premium color hardcover carries an MSRP of $59.99 by way of drive-through RPG. The regular hardcover is $39.99. Or if you want to just grab the PDF alone, you can do so for $24.99. So there you have it. We've got the new Pugmire. It had a very successful crowdfunding run. I think, if I remember correctly, it was up on Kickstarter. And from what I understand, this is now a game in itself. So I do believe, now keep in mind, I've never seen Pugmire. That's what it was originally called, just Pugmire. Never seen it up close. I've never taken a peek at a PDF or anything like that. But it was under my understanding that it's basically a 5e setting. So Pugmire was built on the 5e SRD. From what I think I know. I almost said what I know. I'm like, well, no, I don't necessarily know it. I think that was the case. Now it appears that this is going to be its own thing. It is no longer a 5e setting. So this is a rule book with the setting information. It also includes the cats and rats, which I know in the original Pugmire, we had a separate source book for the cats. I don't know about the rodents, but there you go. There you go. Family friendly. If you like anthropomorphic animals, although I got to admit, this image on the left, the companion dog who's an amputee, it's kind of like, that's kind of weird. To me, that looks a little, that's just odd. So, Keith Lewis says, Cult of Laboratory. I get it. They're laboratory rats. There you go. There you go. Raven is with us in chat, says, hey guys, never ran the Giants trilogy. This is going to be educational. No, it won't. This won't be educational at all. It's what we always jokingly say. I got an education. What are you talking about? I understand these things. I got an education. So once again, the Realms, I shouldn't say it's just Realms of Pugmire is out in hardcover and PDF. No soft cover, I don't believe. I don't think, because I think the soft cover is usually reserved for black and white. I think. Chris Lundgren says, bummer, everything's set for 5th or 5e. Well, this is just a D20 sort of thing now. So that's it. Smoking Pots is joining us tonight. Hopefully Gleeman RX is also jumping on in. Says, if you liked dogs playing poker, you'll love Realms of Pugmire. I'm sure that's exactly how Gleeman RX wanted that presented too. Anyway, I was going to say, hopefully I've said hello to everybody hanging in chat with us tonight. All right, let's move on to our final news piece. And I actually have 2 Traveler-related news pieces tonight, which I normally avoid doing those kind of things, but I figured, okay, the bundle is more bundle of holding. The new Traveler supplement, which is arrived from Mongoose Publishing, is more Mongoose Publishing. And I've got the lowdown on Clans of the Aslan. The Aslan, no emperor, no moot, no grand fleet, no central government of any kind. Their society is founded upon Aslan families and the intricate interrelationships knitting them together. These families form larger prides, and these prides form even larger clans, over 4,000 in number and bound by common heritage and tradition. And Aslan's almost said alliance. It's allegiance is their clan lord and the clan they lead. Explore the inner workings of a clan. Learn about the secret warrior schools and see what life inside the Aslan Harriet is really like. Insights rarely granted to outsiders. Clans of the Aslan provides tips and ideas on running a campaign set amongst the Aslan, along with new options for creating and playing Aslan Travelers. Furthermore, Clans of the Aslan provides rules for creating and running your own clans, as well as descriptions of important Aslan clans and worlds drawn from across charted space. Right now, you can pre-order the 184-page hardcover with PDF for $49.99. If you want, you can just grab the PDF alone right now over at Drive-Thru RPG for $29.99. There you have it. Always nice to see new Traveler stuff. So you can go and you can grab those 2 bundles. I'll talk about the other bundle tomorrow for Traveler over at Bundle of Holding. And then you can say, hey, what do I think of these Aslan? I wonder. Kevin R. Smith says, Pugmire role-playing game is listed under other unique systems on Drive-Thru RPG. I would never use what's on Drive Through RPG is gospel. Not that I've got absolutely nothing against Drive Through RPG. I mean, I'm an affiliate for crying out loud. But, their page counts are wrong. Sometimes the credits that they give for people are wrong. Oh, so-and-so wrote this book. No, they didn't. It's like, no. No, that's not right. But I would think now it would be other unique systems because it's supposed to be the Onyx 20 system, at least according to the sell sheet info. Like I said, I think when it originally came out that it was built on the 5e SRD. I think you needed to have at least the SRD to utilize it. And again, like I said, I'm not positive, but I thought that's what the deal was. Raven says, very nice to see the Traveler still going strong. Yeah, actually, not too bad. Not too bad. So Kevin R. Smith points out, yes, they say the system is Onyx 20. Right, for now. Like I said, I don't know. I'm just sharing a news piece. Because I know it's popular. It's popular with the kids, man. It has to be probably popular for kids. Chris Lendrin asks, besides Drive-Thru and Lulu, is there any other site that carries RPGs in print and PDF? Or are those the only choices? No, not really. I mean, you've got Space Penguin Inc., Exalted Funeral. I mean, a lot of times, Exalted Funeral, you go to it, not everything, but many of their releases, they have an option for just the PDF. If you want to just get the PDF, countless itch sites now. There's a lot of places, a lot of publishers who, Cobalt Press, another prime example. Go to Cobalt Press, got an option for print, you got an option for PDF, you got an option for both. So no, there's loads and loads. It's not only Drive-Thru RPG and Lulu. Both of those are print on demand, actually. Hell, everybody is both. Roll for Combat. Roll for Combat has options PDF or print, what have you. Kevin R. Smith says Realms of Pugmire is $59.99 for the deluxe hardcover. So $39.99 for the standard hardcover, $34.99, I should say. And then $5 if you want to get the PDF with those. Otherwise, yeah. Is Kevin R. Smith working for Onyx Path Publishing or something? Seems awfully enamored by this Realms of Pugmire news piece. Melwinius from York is with us. Says Kickstarters for them were a shit show mostly. OSR Modern Necessities was actually decent. Actually, I'm not familiar with that. I am not familiar with that. Mike says, who let the dogs out? Kevin R. Smith, obviously. So I was just talking about Drive-Thru RPG. So was Kevin R. Smith. So was Chris Lundgren. Well, don't forget the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, happens to be affiliated with those One Bookshelf sites. So if you're going to go visit, say, I don't know, Drive-Thru RPG, Storyteller's Vault, Wargame Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, any of those of the One Bookshelf variety, please stop by thegaminggang.com. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get 5% of that sale. All those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep gaminggang.com around. Also, if you like the video, plus appease those lords of YouTube with a comment or 3 on the videos. If you like the video, if you dig the channel, if you find thegaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, you can always swing on by paypal.me/thegaminggang to make a small donation. Yes. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Making spirits bright. That's what the cup says. It's not me. I'm not making spirits bright. In fact, I'm sucking the life out of the holiday season. I'm draining it. And there are a few of you who pop on by paypal.me/thegaminggang and make not small donations, such as our good friend of the show, the Madman, my friend from high school, Scott Weigel, Joshua Edwards, John Webster, and John Large, all recently stopped by paypal.me, the Gaming Gang. So, and made not small donations. So thank you very kindly to those of you out there who use those banner ads when you're going to the One Bookshelf sites and or stopping by paypal.me, the Gaming Gang. Much appreciated. Thank you kindly. Let's see. Xavier, not even gonna try to pronounce that. So just got here. Love your material. Thank you very much. Welcome aboard. Make yourself comfy and chat. So Kevin R. Smith said, no, I'm just looking stuff up. People are asking about it. They don't. So now Kevin's ripping on Realms of Pugmire. What did Realms of Pugmire do to you, Kevin? He's like, I have no personal interest whatsoever. Raven asks, was the Giants trilogy originally standalone and the Drow stuff was added later? We will talk about that in just a few moments, because I can actually answer that question. Very nice. Very nice. Sean O'Donnell asks, if I visit Drive-Thru RPG, do I get a free KRS with my order of $100 or more? What is KRS? I'm sure it's going to be something like super obvious. I'll be like, oh, yeah, okay. Nice going, Jeff. Nice going. Chris Leonard says they're having before Christmas their monthly game night. They're doing a cheesy board games night. They're bringing Parker Brothers Escape from the Death Star. I remember that. And the 1978 Battlestar Galactica board game. I remember the box. I don't remember the game. So, I do want to point out I wrapped up the game sale. I do not have a total yet because there are a couple of orders that have not finished up. But better than nothing. Better than nothing. I was looking to try to make a donation before, Christmas and that. So, didn't move a lot of stuff. I think all of maybe 40 sounds about right. If these other orders finally wrap up, about 40 games. Not so terrible. Smoking Pots, Jeff, when are you going to offer up and run a table full of lucky winners on Zoom or Discord or something that may get you more than a 2-liter? I don't know. I got to look into doing something like that. But I can't afford to be paying people to play games. Kevin R. Smith says they remember Escape from the Death Star. It was much better than the Destroy the Death Star game. I remember the Star Wars kind of Ace of Aces game that came out that was West End Games, if I remember right. It was kind of a knockoff of Ace of Aces. Yeah, that was a little later. That was into the 80s and that, but still. But as far as Smoking Pots points out, yeah, I would maybe consider doing something like that. Maybe run a Call of Cthulhu one shot, something like that. Chris Leonard got the Witcher books. So Chris had actually ordered in the game sale. And as they will attest, primo stuff. Deploribus Rex, first-time visitor, welcome aboard, says this was the first AD&D module their cousin and his friends played through, talking about the Giants. So, yeah, Smoking Pot says, I'm thinking a tabletop of top donors. Yeah, I figured that. Or I would do something where it was like an X amount of like donation. Donation of X amount or more gets you a spot at the table, something like that. Alrighty. So sadly, I did not get really anything done this weekend. I had a major problem with my sinuses. You can maybe even hear it a little bit in my voice. It's not bad. Just a little bit. Especially when I say computer. And oh man, it was pretty bad for a couple of days. So I didn't do any videos at all. That's okay. I'll take care of plenty of them during my holiday break. So in case you didn't know, these are the last shows of 2024 this week. That's going to be it. It's going to be it. So on Thursday, we are not going to do the next episode of the Building a Fantasy Role-Playing Game because I got a box from Steamforged Games and they asked me if I would consider doing a live unboxing on the air. I'll show you the box when we come back from the intermission. And I said, yeah, that's fine. Because I guess they put some goodies in there for content creators and that. Oh, it's the first, I believe it's the first two of their Epic Encounters Ruins of Symborum releases. So we'll actually take a peek at that. So I think what we'll do is we'll do that and then we'll just do our December AMA. Should also point out that in January, when I return, Tuesdays, I'm going to be doing the same sort of thing like I'm doing tonight, but we're going to be talking about Call of Cthulhu adventures. So we will do that. We'll do that for January. We'll see how it goes, but it's going to be Cthulhu Tuesday. Or Cthulhu, I guess we could call it Cthulhu. I know people bust my chops. That's not how you pronounce Cthulhu. It's called. It's like, hey, you know what? I'll pronounce it like Neil Gaiman and Stephen King pronounce it. And I think I'll be good. Right? I'll take their pronunciations. Just like we're going to talk about the drow a little bit. I'm going to stick by that pronunciation also. All righty. So you might be tuning in because I'm going to talk a little bit about the G series of modules for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And we are going to be doing that in just a few moments. But first, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
Your assignment, danger. Your mission, find the master spy. Your weapon, Secret Sam. Through Secret Sam's periscope, you see him, but he can't see you. You locate the master spy, you talk to him, and Secret Sam's hidden camera is taking his picture right now. Suddenly you're discovered. Secret Sam fires bullets from inside the case. Secret Sam has barrel extension. Special missile sends message to your partner. Mission accomplished. You hand over real photograph. Secret Sam with periscope, message missile, rifle stock, barrel extension, even shoots through this carrying case. And this real camera that works in secretly or out. Takes real photos. Secret Sam. Secret Sam.
Hi, partner, read.
Hi, fellas.
Roy Rogers.
Say, that's a pretty tricky hat, isn't it? Partners, how would you like to surprise your pals like that? Well, you can with my new Roy Rogers Quick Shooter hat. It's by Ideal. And here's how the Quick Shooter hat works. Just press this secret button right here, and a replica of an authentic Western pistol pops out and fires. It's your secret weapon, even when they think you're unarmed. So get Ideal's new Roy Rogers Quick Shooter hat at your favorite store today, and you'll always be ready for anything. Ask for Ideal's new Roy Rogers Quick Shooter hat.
I wouldn't admit this if I wasn't alone, but I really do like Wilkins coffee.
Did you call?
This is the season of light. The season when out of winter's darkness springs the bright miracle of Christmas, warming hearts, bringing the sparkling laughter of childhood happiness to every family circle. We memorialize this happy season with the Christmas brightness of our cities, the spectacle of holiday displays that are so much a part of this happy time. That same light is reflected in the bright bulbs that glitter and glimmer on every Christmas tree across the land. But most important of all is that little glow this wondrous season lights in the faces of all our loved ones. And in that spirit, let us wish you
Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry, Merry Christmas to you and
Oh, that's sly Roy Rogers. Kevin R. Smith is channeling Norm Macdonald a little bit. Hello, sir. Tip of the cap to you. Oh, crap. I forgot it was my shooting hat. Hey, 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 be careful with those. Those are my lucky, that's my lucky stabbing cap. I always liked Norm Macdonald. That's the good ones die young, right? Anyway, so remember I said I'll grab that box. This is the box. So this is the box. Came from the UK. This is from Steamforged Games. So we are going to do a live unboxing on Thursday. And then we'll do a little bit of an AMA. So Melanie says, big box in front of Jeff. That's a new one. Yes, that's what I was talking about. That's the box that they sent. That's supposed to have the Epic Encounters Ruins of Symborum releases. I think there's 2 to start off with. And then some stuff for content creators. Their PR person said that they had put some things in there. They hadn't done anything before for content creators. But it's the first time they were putting some extra goodies in there. So I don't know. So I had asked her, I said, hey, do you want me to do a live unboxing? We'll take a peek at it live. Don't worry, I'm not going to start doing a bunch of live unboxings and live reviews and stuff like that again. No. But I thought I'd do that for that. I thought, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Kind of cool. All righty. So, Keith Lewis says Roy Rogers beat Odd Job to the idea of putting a weapon in his hat. What? Use your words, man. Gleeman RX says, imagine if Bond had pulled out that Roy Rogers gun hat at the end of Goldfinger. There you go. That would be it. All righty. So tonight we are going to explore the G series of modules for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Now, keep in mind, we are not talking about G1-3 Against the Giants, which was the modules collected. And I think they were tweaked. I think they were tweaked in that book. And then, of course, we have the GDQ 1-7 book that came out a few years after that, which collected the Giants, the Drow, and the Queen of the Demon Web Pits all in one book. And I know for a fact that that did change things because they tried to make the whole progression from adventure to adventure more logical. Because the reality is the G series, G1-3, those were all just tournaments that took place at Origins in 1978, which a lot of the original Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons releases tended to be tournament adventures that were just tweaked. And if you're not overly familiar with G1, I tell this story. I know many of you out there are familiar with this. Russell Higgins says they were connected from adventure to adventure. Yes, but I mean, the reality is and we'll talk about it. There's no wilderness adventuring, anything like that. It's essentially, oh, we're at the end of this adventure. Oh, here's the MacGuffin. Well, I guess maybe it's not really a MacGuffin because it serves a purpose. That now will transport you to the next module in the series. So that's what I mean about it. Just kind of, right? So Dice Sales is with us tonight. Welcome aboard. So these were the 3 rounds of the AD&D. Well, I guess it would have, I guess it would have been AD&D. 78, summer of 78, late spring of 78 for Origins. So these were the first 3 rounds. And G1, I started to tell the story, as many of you know, is actually the first Dungeons and Dragons purchase I ever made. First role-playing game purchase I ever made. And it was really the second tabletop gaming purchase I ever made. And the first one was actually Magic Realm from Avalon Hill. I bought it at this one hobby shop. And I was like, wow, that looks really cool. And I was already reading Tolkien and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, wow, that looks cool. And then I got it home and I was like, what the, huh? Which I guess many adults purchased that, got that home and went, huh? I think it's supposed to be one of the most obtuse Avalon Hill games ever made. Don't know. Hey, Avalon Hill had some really good stuff. But anyway, so I'm at this other hobby shop, which was down the street from my grandparents' house on my mom's side. Devon Hobbies. And I went in there and it was, your traditional sort of hobby shop. And they actually had slot car racing in the back. But they had, models and stuff like that. And then they had a little section that had D&D. I don't remember board games being in this hobby shop, but they had D&D. And they had the rack. And they also would sell miniatures. So they had glass cases with stuff, and one of the glass cases had miniatures, and they had individual minis, and then they had the Grenadier boxes. At one point they also had the heritage stuff, because that's where I first picked up the Knights and Magic, which I now have the rights to, that you could purchase through the Gaming Gang. and also get the physical book through Lulu at the moment. And I remember getting the mod and I thought, wow, this looks really interesting. And I took it home, opened it up, and I was like, how do you play? What? I don't get this. I don't, how do you play this? Because I didn't realize you had the other books. I thought that was it. I'm 10 years old. Okay, that's okay. So that's how I got started into checking stuff out. And then the following year is when we started playing and I started running it. So I ran the G series as a 10, 11-year-old kid. And I ran it for a couple of friends in grammar school. Actually, there were 3 of them, but I don't remember the third person. But I do remember it was one kid's name was Chris. The other kid's name was Doug. And then like I said, I can't remember the third kid's name. So it was either this other kid named Chris or this kid named Tom. Anyway, so I actually have run this. Now, did I run this very well? I mean, come on. What are you going to expect from an 11-year-old game master, right? But something else that's very interesting about G1, the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, is it's the first published module for Dungeons & Dragons from TSR. Because Gary Gygax and the Blooms and some other folks who were involved with TSR thought, who the hell's going to want to buy published adventures? Why are you going to pay money for that when you can make this stuff up on your own? Which is kind of funny if you think about it. But then again, if going back to the late 70s, people had more free time back then. Or at least it seems people had more free time. Tessie Trekkie says, Tournament Dungeons & Dragons is such a strange concept to me. I played in one tournament. It was not like at Gen Con or Origins or anything like that. It was at a small like game weekend that I've talked about. This community center had these game weekends a couple of times a year that we went to for a couple of years, and we had a lot of fun. And the first one we went to had a D&D tournament. There were only like 2 or 3 teams. And yes, it was weird. It was kind of odd. So Russell Higgins says it was based upon the group, not the individual. Not necessarily true. Not necessarily true. It is actually, we just talked about this last week. S4 was the Lost Caverns of Socanth, or whatever the hell it is, Sojacanth. That was a tournament, but the top player from each of those teams advanced. Not the teams, the top player got to advance, because the whole premise was there were all these various different adventuring groups from competing timelines and stuff like that. So all the characters were the same. So if you made it to the finals, then you actually got a different character. You weren't guaranteed to have the same character. Tessie Trekkie says, Jeff, your pronunciation of grammar school sounds like grandma school to Australian ears. Lots of little old ladies learning to knit and bake and scare their grandchildren. No, it's not grandma school. It's grammar school. That's what we call it. I mean, what do they call it now? I mean, you've got, well, in Chicago, we didn't have like middle school. We didn't have that. We had in the suburbs outside Chicago, yes, they have those middle schools, or at least they've got them now. But when I was a kid, we had most schools were kindergarten through 8th grade. There you go. Kevin R. Smith says grade school. And then we went to high school. That was it. So I think it was called grammar school because you were learning, you're a kid and you're learning proper grammar, mathematics. And like I said, it's just a term. So anyway, so this was the first round of the tournament at Origin 78. It was the first published module for Dungeons and Dragons. And the reason why TSR got into the business of publishing modules is because they had licensed Judges Guild to be able to create adventures for Dungeons and Dragons, figuring, well, that's fine. Well, we'll get a piece of the nut from them. We'll get a slice of the pie from them. And, who knows? And then Judges Guild actually did pretty well. So TSR was like, well, wait a second. Hey, maybe we should start doing this. So you'll notice a lot of the early modules that came out from TSR are all built off of tournaments. And the funny thing is, I did not remember that being the case with the G series, that it was a tournament. A couple of questions popped up. Smoking Pots points out the trilogy of trilogies was Slave Lords, Giants, then Queen of Spiders. Well, Slave Lords came out, to my knowledge, that was the last. So I'm pretty sure Queen of the Spider Queen of the Demon Web Pits. Another title that just rolls off the tongue, right? Came out before the slavers, against the slavers. So I know a lot of people talk about how the sort of progression that some dungeon masters have used has been to start with Hamlet and Temple of Elemental Evil, then to the slavers, then to the giants, then to the drow, and then finish up with Q1, which is the only Q module there was. So, but it wasn't published like that. G1 and the D series, and then as well as Q, those were released in sequence. So, but this is designed for up to 9 characters. Yeah, isn't that funny? Every time I see this kind of stuff, I'm always like, It's like, yeah, because it's not necessarily 9 characters. Some of the module covers will say 7 to 10 players, not necessarily characters, or at least I remembered that was the case. So they should have, out of all your characters, they should have an average level of 9th level. Zoinks. It's like, wow. So I find it very interesting because you would never see something like this today. You would never see a company release an adventure module for their game that has just come out with like advanced D&D, right? Those books had just come out. They hadn't been out very long. So you've had, at this point in time, you would have had the Player's Handbook Monster Manual, and then Giants. So I don't even think you had the Dungeon Master's Guide out yet. Anyway, you wouldn't see a company be like, okay, so The first adventure we're going to release for our new game is for like level 9 characters. You'd be like, what? It would be a starting adventure, obviously enough. That is not the case here. And it is also mentioned for all of these modules, the entire G series, it is mentioned that this is designed for experienced players, not experienced characters. Yes, you do need to have characters of a certain level to have a chance to survive. But clever and experienced players could get away with fewer characters, but you are not going to be able to take new players, give them high-level characters, and expect them to be able to survive. So the premise of G1, setting of the Hill Giant Chief, is that the player characters are somehow they're in trouble. And they have been tasked with finding the hill fort of the Hill Giants and essentially killing everything that moves in retaliation for raids that are going on with these giants and their allies. And if the player characters don't pull this off, their necks are on the chopping block. So as far as a tournament start, that's fine. Here you go. Here's your pre-generated character. This is the premise. You need to go and investigate this and stop these giants. Otherwise, you're going to be executed. Okay, yeah, fine. All right, let's start the tournament. We only got 3 hours. Let's go. But for an ongoing campaign, not so great, right? Because for one, if you've got a bunch of characters who are neutral and good, they're probably not doing things that would get them sentenced to death. So this is certainly an adventure campaign that if you're planning on running it, you want to run some stuff beforehand to kind of set your players up for success. And then you could do something along the lines of, I know it's kind of a hackneyed hook, but that's the lords of the region that are suffering from these giant raids hear of your exploits, and they offer you, your own. Because by this point in time, around level 9 is when you start moving into domain play, if you want. So it could possibly be that the hook would be if the player characters are able to find out what's going on with this hill fort, defeat these giants, that they will be rewarded with land, right? Maybe their own little fiefdom or something. So there are some things that happen in these modules that, strangely enough, don't compute if you're just playing these. Like, if you wanted to, you could just start a campaign and begin with G1. That's what I did when I was, a kid. But the thing is, there are certain things that happen in the later adventures that it's sort of like, well, great. Nothing along the way has provided us with the answer for this problem. So, anyway, so Tessie Trekie's talking about how school is broken up in New Zealand and I guess Australia. Pete Reckowitz says their Black Friday shipment from Exalted Funeral arrived today. Nice. Very nice. You'll have to tell us what you got there, PD. Kind of curious. I've got some more Exalted Funeral reviews coming shortly. All right. So anyway, if I were going to be running this today, I would look to either run some adventures prior to this beginning, or tweak. Well, we're going to tweak these adventures anyway, but tweak some of the things that that will set up the player characters for success later on down the road if they have an opportunity, right? If they play well, if they're clever, if they're smart, maybe even lucky, that when they run up against some challenges later on, they'll be able to overcome those. All right. So anyway, so the player characters set off to find this hill fort with Chief Nasra. I don't know what Gary Gygax was doing with all these goofy ass names. It's always names that just cannot roll off your tongue. It's like, Gary, why don't you just name all the characters Cthulhu, right? Nyarlathotep. Yeah, that's all easy. Those only roll off my tongue because I've been saying them for decades. So this, at this point in time, when this was published, there really weren't any wilderness rules that were out there. Wilderness Adventures wasn't going to be out for almost 10 years, 8, 9 years, something like that. So you didn't have that. So essentially, this adventure just begins with the setup. Hey, this is your mission. Off with your heads if you don't take this mission, or if you fail, and boom, we're gonna drop you off in front of this hill fort. So the player characters are gonna have to figure out how are they gonna get into this, essentially this steading of the hill giant chief. And the whole area is supposed to be very rainy, very kind of dank, damp. And as a game master, you probably want to kind of portray the inside, at least the top level, which is where the hill fort is, to present that as being just kind of very damp, very kind of musky, sort of moldy. Everything's made out of wood, it's all wood logs and stuff like that. So I would even go and probably make it where it's sort of sound is muffled a bit. It's kind of absorbed by this wood. In fact, it's even in the adventure itself. If the player characters try to burn the place down, that it will be very difficult to do so. I think it's 8% chance to even start stuff on fire. So the approach to this is to utilize stealth and do your best, because they're hill giants. Now, granted, the hill giants are kind of the weakest of the giants that are out there, and weirdly enough, they're the smallest of the giants, because in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, it's kind of weird because it's like, okay, so as you go up in power for the giants seem to get bigger. I always thought it was a little odd. But there is one set piece early on, if the player character is going the route that you would probably expect them to, entering into the hill fort, they will encounter some giant children or youths. And it's good. It's kind of one of those dilemmas, right? Because it's like, okay, so the giant kids, their stuff is about the size of the human characters, human player characters, or humanoid. Well, I guess we'll say humanoid player characters. Obviously, halflings, dwarves, not so much. But if the player characters can get their hands on the giants' kids' clothes and stuff, and they can pad them, they can kind of pass themselves off as the kids traveling through this hill fort. Once again, this should be kind of dank, lit but not well lit. And it should be very obvious from the beginning when the player characters get inside the hill fort that there's some sort of party or celebration going on because they can hear it. So funny enough, and our friend at the show, Kabuki Kid, last week had mentioned this, and I didn't remember this. And then I took a peek and I was like, oh my gosh, sure enough, Studying the Hill Giant Chief is all of 6 pages of adventure. There's pre-generated characters and stuff, but the adventure itself is 6 pages. That's it. And there is so much packed inside those 6 pages. Now, what is not in those 6 pages is the premise of setup for certain encounters, set pieces. A lot of stuff is just presented as, okay, this is what's in this area. Here's their stats. And the stat blocks are really short, right? It's not, oh, okay, so if the player characters do this, the giants respond this way. Or if the player characters do that, the giants will respond this way. No, really not. There's little bits and pieces of that, but not much. So yes, so who was it? There we go. Tessie Trekkie pointed this out. Do we murder the children? That's it. That it is the age-old dilemma. Like, oh, okay, so we went and battled in this orc lair. It's all these little orc babies. What are we supposed to do with these? Mateo is with us, joining us in chat. So the whole thing is that these giants have supposedly, been off raiding and murdering and killing all these people and destroying property and stealing things and stuff like that. So the player characters are to put an end to it. And essentially, they are supposed to put these giants to the sword. So the premise should be that even though they're kids, they're still hill giants. They're still evil. So you're going to kill them. So you got that. So that is one of the encounters that kind of stands out to me. Another one, we just saw the image pass by, are the 2 giants, the giantesses, I guess we'll say, in the kitchen with the orc slaves. And funny enough, when that image goes by again, there's like a little Easter egg. I don't know if it's real or imagined, but if you look, there's what appears to be the Kool-Aid Man pitcher on the shelf behind one of the giants. So if you look close, it looks like there's a little face with a smile on it. It's sort of like, okay, maybe. So in this case, we get the 2 cooks and orc slaves. And of course, the hill fort itself is not really well populated. The player characters are going to encounter hill giants here and there. But the great majority of them have gathered in the hall and they're having a celebration. They're no doubt celebrating the return from another raid. So if the player characters want to just go and attack the party, the celebration, pretty tricky, right? Pretty tricky. Gluin RX says, oh yeah, I see the Kool-Aid pitcher. Coco B is hanging with us, says, when we were 10 and 11, my group had no compunctions killing monster children. Right, exactly. But when I ran this, I was like 10 or 11 or whatever. No, There's no problem with that. It was like, yeah, okay, all good. So anyway, the one part that I didn't remember so well about this is the dungeon area below. And I think part of it is because I actually had a chance to play this for Pathfinder about, gotta be about 12, 13 years ago, maybe a little more than that. It wasn't long after I started the gaming gang. So yeah, probably about 12, 13 years ago. And we just rocked through it. And it was just the top level. It was just the hill fort. And we just snuck through everything. I was a rogue. And I will say that the game master that was running it, I could tell was pretty new to it. And it was funny because I actually was at a game store, the only game store worth a damn, I thought, in the Phoenix Valley. And I just went there to cover like a big weekend they were having. And the owner of the store asked me if I would sit in and play in this Pathfinder game because they didn't have enough people. And if they didn't get anybody else to play, they weren't going to be able to run it. And I said, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So it was only the top level. So off the top of my head, I did not remember there's a dungeon area below. But going back to these chefs, or cooks, I should say, unlike other adventures, the slaves won't fight. They won't fight you. So the orc slaves aren't going to fight against the adventurers. The two cooks will. The orcs will just stay out of the way, and they will treat the adventurers as saviors. And they will tell the adventurers that in the dungeon area below, there are orcs who are in rebellion against the hill giants because the hill giants conquered a tribe of orcs and they're using them as slave labor. So they'll actually tell the characters how they can go about when they encounter orcs below, go about showing them that, hey, they're friends. So kind of interesting aspect there because as the adventure continues, the player characters actually will have an opportunity to possibly rally these orc rebels and lead them against the hill giants and their various different allies. So, but funny enough, off the top of my head, I didn't actually remember the dungeon area all that much, even though I know I read it, I ran it. So that was kind of weird, there's quite a bit going on down in the basement area, or I should say the dungeon area. And this kind of sticks to the traditional 2 levels in a module that we would see so many times. We've got some really nice treasure in the chief's treasure room that's down in the dungeon area below. There's a weird abandoned temple down there, which is kind of foreshadowing for later on in this campaign. Some interesting creatures that the players are going to encounter, such as bugbears, carrion crawlers. There are some stone giant allies. And then, of course, we have the possibility of allying with the orc slaves that are in revolt. So here's one of the aspects of running this that probably would need to be addressed. Like I was talking about how when you start running this, are you going to run this where you pick up from here, or do you build up to it? So one of the things, obviously enough, is player characters should be able to A, speak hill giant, not all of them, but at least have one or two, and speak Orc or Orcish, because these creatures don't speak common normally. So once again, something that's kind of left out of the equation. I will say that this adventure itself does have a good mix of straight up combat and opportunities to possibly avoid combat. So like that quite a bit. And at the end of the adventure, once you get to that treasure room, you will find a map of the glacial rift of the frost giant Jarl, as well as a mysterious magic chain, which will actually teleport you to the glacial rift. So all in all, I like G1. I'm amazed by how much is packed inside the adventure in just a handful of pages. It's pretty wild. It's kind of funny. In chat, there's like a big discussion going back and forth about Australia, New Zealand, fish and chips. Bradley Thorpe is with us. Good to see you. So, of course, having found that magical chain that'll teleport you to G2, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. And of course, because this was a tournament, these modules aren't really designed for characters leveling up. Now, of course, you can. But the previous adventure was like, oh, it's for 9 characters, average level 9. Okay. And then G2, which also came out in 1978, which was the second round of the Origins 1978 D&D tournament. Once again, same thing. It's for like 9 characters, average level 9th. It's like, okay. So something that's really weird with this is, and I think this adventure suffers quite a bit. I'll be right up front. G2 is my least favorite adventure in this entire campaign line, outside of maybe Q1, but I dislike Q1 for other reasons. And I think Q1 can easily be saved. This is just, first of all, it starts off and now you are in the, you're not that, funny enough, you're not that far away from the hill giants. In fact, it says that located dozens of leagues away. So it's not that far, right? It's dozens, not hundreds. And yes, a league is supposed to be 3 miles. Dice Tales asks, are the giants at the party eating fish and chips? There you go. That's what the cooks are making. Fish and chips. And that's what they start throwing at the player characters. So anyway, the premise here is, in fact, the premise is kind of the same with G1, that the adventurers should have found an area that they can use as a home base. And if they need to, go and rest, recuperate, they can by going back to their base camp. But interestingly enough, it's not like built up upon, right? So it's sort of like, oh, okay, so this is your home base. But it's kind of like, okay, so what did your characters bring? What is your expedition force got with them? I don't know. Gotta go rest and get your spells back. That's where you go. And as I mentioned, these are really short. Once again, G2 is about 6 pages in length also, as far as the adventure itself. And you're looking at, as far as the characters with like wilderness exploration, because this is supposed to be in the north and it is freezing and howling winds and blowing snow. But of course, we didn't have the wilderness adventures at this point, so there's nothing in it about like frostbite, snow blindness, anything like that. Something else I find kind of strange about this is that it's supposed to be the winds above the rift are not as strong as the winds inside the rift, which doesn't really make sense to me because the characters are going down into essentially what's a big crack in the earth. It's like, so how would it be more windy? It's like, where's the wind coming from? There are some jumps in logic in this adventure in particular. Russell Higgins says they like G2, but it's linear. Yeah, it's fairly linear. So the premise here is that the player characters are still looking to extract vengeance on the giants, and they're still pursuing the information on who's behind all this. So the player characters will take on loads of frost giants, loads and loads of frost giants across these various different caverns and caves and things like that. And I gotta say that this adventure, one of the reasons why I don't care for it much is that there isn't much opportunity to do anything other than engage in combat. There are very few opportunities, if any, to parlay, to avoid confrontation. And once again, this is an adventure that kind of throws out like dungeon ecology again, where some things just don't make sense. So there is the, I want to say I think it's called a Rismora. There's a picture of it. It's a pretty bad, big baddie that actually can swallow characters whole if it rolls a natural 20. That I like. I like that monster. One thing you got to keep in mind with AD&D is that what these monsters do is really more to the imagination of the game master than anything else. If you remember looking through some of the various different entries in the monster manual, they can be kind of bare bones as far as what do they do? The thing that throws me off is we got a couple of white dragons here, and the white dragons are actually in a cavern that's blocked off with a boulder, and the only way in or out is through the passage that's blocked by a boulder. Okay. It's like, so how have these not starved? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Funny enough, AD&D dragons really aren't that big a deal. I mean, they're tough, but they're not like later edition dragons. So, like with these two white dragons, and they are adult white dragons, if I remember right. I don't think they're young dragons. They've got like 50 hit points. So they're right in the same ballpark as the giants, really, hit point wise. So they shouldn't be too much of a hassle. I think the most challenging encounter that the player characters will have is with a group of 5 ogre magi, which will probably be pretty tough to overcome. Although there is a storm giantess that the player characters can encounter who may ally with them and help them out. There are, in fact, in G3, you've got a couple of relatively powerful allies that you can recruit that as a dungeon master, You want to make sure that you don't steal the spotlight from your players because they're allied with, say, as an example, in this case, the Storm Giantess, who wants to take out the Jarl. If I remember right, I don't think the Jarl gets a name. Funny enough, in a lot of these modules, a lot of NPCs in that just don't get names. Sort of like, oh, well, this is the thief. They're a 12th level thief. It's like, oh, okay. Tessie Trekkie says, I like my dungeons like I like my bottles of absinthe, filled with green stuff, mildly hallucinogenic, and I have no idea what the experience meant afterwards. Yeah, I can see that. So anyway, we once again have a couple of levels and lots of frost giants, some pretty good treasure and stuff like that. But I think this adventure kind of suffers because I think one of the big challenges the player characters should be facing here is the environment, should be the weather. And as written, because there weren't really rules for anything in AD&D at this time for that, just kind of hand waved. So what I would do is I would trim out a lot of the combat encounters. I would probably redo the map. I would leave some of the big set pieces, some of the big battles. Like, for one, I don't know about the 2 white dragons. I really don't. I don't think they really bring anything to the proceedings. Although, interestingly enough, I think this is the first adventure that would actually feature a dragon. I'm trying to remember if I don't think G1 has a dragon in it. No, I don't think it does. So this would probably be the first time we saw a dragon appear in a published TSR adventure. Of course, I would keep the Ogre Magi as well. But it's just a lot of combat. There is really no consequence to just going back. Same thing in G1, going back to your home base, recuperating, regrouping, outside of it being mentioned in a couple of sentences that obviously, as intruders are discovered, the giants aren't going to just keep going about their regular business. But of course, that's completely up to the dungeon master, what they do. So they're going to set up ambushes. They're going to set up more guards, certain locations, things like that. But none of that is pointed out to you, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that because once again, you're looking at 6 pages of adventure. So that's fine. But all in all, it's not AD&D at its finest, at least in my opinion. I don't think so. So I would not skip it if I were running this campaign, but I would trim it down. But of course, I would do that with just about every AD&D adventure we've talked about to this point, because modern sensibility and players enjoy combat, of course, but are you going to spend your 3 or 4 hour session with 2 or 3 combats and that's all that gets done? It'll just turn into a real slog. So of course, you're going to find a way to get to G3, Hall of the Fire Giant King. Also was released in 1978. Also part of the Dungeons and Dragons tournament at Origins 1978. This changes things up a little bit. So we actually get 3 levels, which is a little different. Like I said, normally with the modules, even modules that came after this, you get 2 levels. right? You get the upper level. Sometimes it could be a building of some sort, a temple. And then, of course, we get the second level, which is normally some sort of dungeon or cavern system or something along those lines. Well, here we actually get 3 levels of adventuring. And this will be the finale of the G series, but it's not the finale of the actual campaign. So, once again, you're going to start off with around 9 characters, average level, 9th level. Obviously enough, running this as a campaign, your characters are going to be able to level up. So no issues with that whatsoever. So by this point in time, I would think your characters should have gone up about a level, maybe 2, depending on their class and depending on the experience points that they've earned to this point. Now, if this were an adventure that was designed for modern 5e with the same number of encounters and everything, by this point, the player characters would have gone up like 7 or 8 levels. So they're going to have an opportunity to also have a base camp again, but this time, whenever the players leave to go back to regroup at their base camp, there is a cumulative 10% chance that the fire giants and their allies will have found their camp. Which I like. I definitely dig that because, first 2 adventures, it's essentially, outside of, maybe the giants setting up some ambushes and maybe some more guard posts, really no blowback from the player characters kind of coming and going whenever they need to rest up. Here, not so much. So essentially what would happen is that if the fire giants and their allies find the camp, it's not when personally, I wouldn't run it where they find the camp while the player characters are there. I would have it that the player characters return to their base camp just to find everything destroyed. And it's like, now what? Now they've got no place to recuperate or anything like that. So that's how I would run that. So the players are going to take on the titular fire giant king, who has this oddball name of Snur or Snoory. Hey, at least it's easy to say. Gotta give Gygax that. I can say it easily. I don't have to stumble over a bunch of consonants in the middle of a name. And something else that's kind of cool is that to this point, you've got like your big boss battle has been at the end of the proceedings for the most part, unless the player characters decide they want to attack that celebration with the hill giants. Then they're going to have their big battle earlier. But for the most part, for the first 2 modules, your confrontation with that module's big bad has been towards the end of the adventure. Here, it's going to be right away. So the player characters, if they're entering essentially the only way that's indicated in the module, if they're coming in, the second area they get into is going to be the King's Hall. And the Fire Giant King is going to be sitting there on their throne. And then, of course, now the player characters are going to have to figure out how are they going to deal with that. It's not necessarily that they walk in the door and it's like, oh, combat. It's, they have an opportunity to try to sneak through because it's not like they have to go through the entire hall to exit. There are some egresses along the side that maybe they could sneak to. So there is that. But I thought it was kind of interesting. It's like, okay, so there you go. So there's the entrance. oh, and here, yeah, there's the hall, and there's the fire giant king. So I like that. I thought that was kind of cool. So a lot going on in this adventure. And out of the three, I probably like this one the best out of the G series because there is loads of opportunity to interact. So not always positively, but not everything has to be a slugfest as far as progressing through this adventure, especially when the characters get down into the third level and they actually find out what is going on, who is behind riling up these giants for them to be going out and raiding the various different areas. Because even though the player characters have traveled to these different locations, these locations also are under attack. It's not only the area that they were in for the hill giants. So I don't know if that's necessarily spelled out in G3, but that's how I approached it. Even as a 10, 11-year-old kid, it was like, oh yeah, all these places are being attacked by the giants. Like I said, I think that is the case. So you're going to have quite a few fire giants. Environmentally, this would also be a challenge, I would think, especially with characters who are in metal armor. Once again, not really tackled in the module itself. This module is a little bit longer. If I remember right, I think it's like 10 pages. So it's not 6 pages of adventure. I want to say it's a little bit longer, but it's not a ton longer. Some of that cool encounters in this would be there are a trio of Rakshasas that the player characters will encounter, and it's presented that the Rakshasas are going to present the appearance of friends of the player characters. So this is a situation where, as a dungeon master, you want to be prepared for this. So, okay, so who am I going to put in this, and what is going to be the story that they tell as far as how did friends of the adventurers find themselves here? But you also want to keep in mind that you want to make sure that it's a story that's got some holes in it that the player characters don't necessarily have to sit there and be like, oh, well, obviously there are friends. Because something that I think gets used a little too much in this adventure is the something's presented as one thing, but it's really something else. So there is an evil dwarf advisor to the fire giant king. And then when the player characters encounter them, they play themselves off as they're a prisoner. So I'm not a big fan of having like multiple, I would say, how would I phrase this? I'm not the sort of game master who likes to have multiple examples of betrayal taking place in a single adventure. Because what ends up happening is that when the players find themselves in a situation where somebody's presenting whatever, the situation as being one thing, and it is that one thing, then the players are like, oh, no. We've been tricked 5 times already. We're not going to get tricked a 6th. So, I don't know. I think with the evil dwarf, I would make sure that his story is really weak and that the players would be like, yeah, no. Second level I like the prison area. Players are going to find that they've got a couple of possible allies there. Some fairly powerful allies. There's the thief who's been captured, who, if I remember correctly, I don't think they give an alignment for. And she's like 11th level, and she's willing to help the adventurers, but she's also kind of eyeing the stuff they've got. So once again, it's kind of like, oh, okay, another betrayal possibly. And then there is a 20 hit dice Titan who has been drugged, but it is possible for the player characters to use magic to get the drug out of its system, and it will also ally with the player characters. There is also I'm going to say it's the Temple of the Eye, which is where the players are first going to start to learn about what is the motivation, what is spurring the giants on into their raids. And it's the drow. And it'll be the first time that the drow are introduced in AD&D. So, and it's very possible that if you were running this, that it'll be the first time that the drow might be introduced in your adventuring. So they find the mastermind of this whole plot, and they encounter her on the 2nd level, and I would make sure she escapes, because there's also another confrontation on the 3rd level that would be pretty interesting. She should be your big bad going forward. Then you've got the 3rd level, and there's some interesting encounters on the 3rd level. I think the most important aspects of the 3rd level is that the player characters will meet some other drow that are not necessarily aligned with Eklavdra, who is if I remember right, I think she's a cleric, the drow who's behind everything. So for one, they're not allied with her, and they're actually opposed to her. So it's very possible that the player characters can find themselves allied with some of the drow on the 3rd level. There are also a trio of mind flayers that they'll encounter who are just sort of visitors, kind of like tourists, who aren't actually spoiling for a fight either. So William Hellesice is talking about the drow racism. See, this is something that I never understood about the drow in Dungeons and Dragons when they were first introduced. So they're supposed to live in the underworld, and they're really dark skinned. And it's sort of like, well, if they lived in the underworld, because they're also supposed to be sensitive to like sunlight on the surface, wouldn't they be like deathly pale? Not like dark? And yes, I get it. Oh, yeah. Oh, so they can hide and stuff like that. Doesn't make any sense. So the reality is, as far as any sort of like dark elves that I might have in our game that we're building, they would certainly, if they're living in the underworld and stuff like that, just as William as I should points out, yeah, they would be albino or close to albino. And the weird thing too is they have the white hair. So you would think, okay, they've got the white hair or the really light hair. I don't know. Kind of weird. Anyway, actually, if I remember right, I said the Eklavdra is a cleric. I think she's a fighter cleric. She's like 10th level fighter cleric, which would essentially mean she's like a 20th level character. But once again, like I said, I would probably look to make sure that she escapes. I know. I am one of those manipulative game masters. So as I had talked about earlier, that there's certain things in this campaign that the game master has to be aware of, dungeon master has to be aware of, to plan ahead for. One of those is that on the 3rd level, there is a Gorgon who actually looks like it's a red dragon. There's an illusion that it's a red dragon. It's not a red dragon. It's the Gorgon. And it's got a breath weapon that will turn characters to stone. But if all you've been playing is this campaign, there's no way to turn them back. Outside of a ring of wishes. I think it's like a ring of 3 wishes that the player characters may have found in G2. They could use that, but that's kind of it. And I mean, there's the Titan. The Titan is a magic can use magic, but it's clerical magic in this adventure. So, and Stone to Flesh is an arcane spell. So, or whatever, it's a magic user spell. So you would need to kind of have something that you've planned ahead for this, because it would kind of suck if all of a sudden, half of your party has been turned to stone. It's like, oh, okay, now I can't do anything about that now. Guess we'll have to finish up the adventure. So, all right, Sarah D's rocking out for the night. Thanks for hanging with us. I'm almost finished. We're going to wrap this up. So once again, that's one of the things. And then the player characters encounter a red dragon. So we've had the illusion of a red dragon, and then they encounter a red dragon. It just feels like it's tacked on. Now, the dungeon ecology is a little bit better in G3 than it was in G2, but there's still some head scratchers here and there. But as an adventure itself, I like the fact that there's parlay, there's opportunities to avoid combat. And then, of course, there's going to be some pretty cool combat encounters as well. So I do like this quite a bit. Now, of course, this ends up running into the D series, which is the Drow series. So a lot of people who thought, oh, well, it's a 3-part giant series when this first came out, were kind of surprised to find out that, oh, hey, this leads into another adventure. So tomorrow night, we're going to discuss the D series as well as Q1. And that will wrap up our exploration, I guess we'll say, of classic Advanced Dungeons and Dragons adventures. Of course, if you've been enjoying this, keep in mind, in January, on Tuesdays, it's going to be Cthulhu Tuesdays, or Tuesdays, as each Tuesday night after the news, I am going to tackle a classic Call of Cthulhu adventure. So we will be doing that. So, Raven says, I think the depiction of shadow elves in BECMI as an evil underground albino race was better. I agree. I completely agree. All right. So all in all, I got to say, I like this pretty well. I mean, I think that as far as the G series, especially when you take into account that these were the first published Dungeons and Dragons adventures of any type from TSR, and that they were built on tournaments, which are a completely different beast than just your regular game nights around the table with your friends, I honestly think these hold up pretty well. I think part of the reason why is because they're short, they're very few pages. There's a lot of information that's packed into those pages, but there's also a lot of agency given to the dungeon master of how they want to approach this. So as I mentioned previously, it's written in each of these 3 adventures that the players need to be experienced, not just have high-level characters, but the players themselves need to be experienced in order for them to survive these adventures, get the most out of them. I think it's also important to note that I think that it would also be important that the dungeon master be experienced, because there is a lot of things in these adventures that are simply not said, not presented. Like I said, where the giants will set up ambushes and they'll put more guards out. At no point does it say, okay, well, they would be here, here, here. No, that's all going to be up to the dungeon master. As the player characters, intrude on these different areas, there should be a lot of moving parts going on, that you shouldn't have everybody just sitting in their keyed location waiting for the player characters to come and murder them. That is not necessarily going to provide for a very exciting campaign. All in all, I could see trimming these down to give it more modern sensibilities, where you're not looking at 30 combat encounters throughout just one of these adventures, plus whatever might come up by way of just random wanderers and things like that. But as kind of a skeleton to build on, I think you'll be in good shape. William Hell, as I says, Dungeon Master is one tough job. It is. Being a game master is not easy. And we talked about this before. Being a game master, being a good game master, doesn't just come naturally to everybody. So, and I mean, I don't get to play too often, but I have played with some pretty poor game masters. And there have been occasions where it was sort of like, we're talking over the decades, not like, oh, just this past month I got to play a couple of times. No. But there have been occasions where I had an opportunity to play, and the game master just didn't add anything to the proceedings. Where when it was all said and done, I was sort of like, I could have probably played something else. Probably had a better time. So yes, if you are a player and you've got a game master and you like your game master, you better be good to your game master. Better make sure you take care of them. I'm telling you. All right, that is it for tonight. Pretty long show. One of the longest shows in quite some time. So hopefully tomorrow night we'll kind of zip through it a little bit quicker. But that's it for this time out. If you were watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, bigger thank you, because not only are you keeping me company, you're keeping each other company, talking about New Zealand and fish and chips and all these other things that had nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons, which is fine. Of course, I know a lot of folks out there, they don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you very much for taking time out to watch any of the over 2,100 videos here on the channel. Of course, if you like the video, Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. So it'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube. Also let you know when I'm sharing other videos, such as my upcoming review of Pine Box, Texas Middle School for Savage Worlds. This is the box set. Yes, I was going to shoot video of it this weekend and then had the sinus problems, which kind of knocked me out of action. But I promise I will have a review of that very shortly. Also, keep in mind that this week, final shows of 2024 for the Gaming Gang Dispatch. There will be more videos, though, before New Year's. So keep that in mind. And I will be back on, I think it's the 3rd or is it the 2nd? I think it's the 2nd is that Thursday. So after this week, I will be off and then be back on the 2nd. So we'll actually be doing the Let's Create a Fantasy Role-Playing Game series on that Thursday. All righty then. So everybody enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is in your neck of the woods. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. And as always, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.